In the configuration for the hub, you can see here that for hub 9, 6, 7, 5, and 3, we've told the system that those are stub hubs. What this means is like, well, it has a lot of different meanings depending on the use case. Maybe you want a device to be a hub because you want all your spokes to form tunnels to it, because that's where one of your critical applications is. Or so you want all the spokes to have access to that data center to get to resources in the data center, but you're not really concerned with whether or not you can route through the data center onto some other place, or whether or not you can WAN to WAN. It's not a transit hub. It is just it's a hub that provides local access to a resource that you want to be available within the region. In other words, you want it to be a hub, but you want you want regional routing to be turned off. And I'll tell you right now that that's essentially what this feature does, is it disables regional routing for that specific hub. It's the easiest way to think about it. So the Stub Hub feature turns off the redistribution of routes from spokes to other spokes within the region. It also turns off the redistribution of routes from, let's say, 192.168.5.0. That subnet will not be redistributed to other hubs in other regions by the stub. So the stub just becomes a spoke, but it's actually a hub because it gets tunnels formed to it. It's also still subject to policy the way a hub would be with regard to like local breakout and the extra configuration you can do for hubs in the local breakout panel. The important part here, though, is it only turns off redistribution for fabric routes. It doesn't turn off local BGP or OSPF peer redistribution. As you would expect, it can't. The whole idea here is that there are routes within the data center that we want our spokes to have access to, but we don't want to have to bother. We don't want to contaminate or load up our routing table with a bunch of reflected routes from that hub. So we've reduced the number of routes from like 9 down to 4. That's the basic function of what this does. Now, this is where it's configured. It's pretty prominent feature because it dominates the hub screen. There are two things I want you to note here. One is that at the very top of the screen up here, when you add a new hub into the fabric, in the current release in 9.1, you would type to select the appliance that you want to make into a hub. And then you'll notice that the default behavior, the drop down here says re-advertise routes. That means that's not a stub. If you click the drop down here, it'll say, we can see it down here, do not re-advertise routes. And then in parentheses, Stub Hub. So we wanted to like describe what the feature does with common language, and then provide a colloquial reference to this word that we use to describe the mode, which is in this case is stub. So you can flip this mode in one of two ways. When you add a brand new hub, you just pick from the drop down up here at the top, and that it'll be added with whatever mode you're in. Or you can just come into this hub screen here and just click the drop down and flip the designation. This is a first class item. So the routes that you learn, if you go to like a spoke or another hub somewhere and you look at routes you're learning from a stub hub, those routes will say stub in them. So those are routes that were local to that appliance that got shared into subnet sharing because they were local. They were not transit. It'll actually say that in the route table. You can see that here.